This is saying something about every single Fireteam op. There are a lot of Fireteam ops in the game currently within the portal, and some are hit or miss. Some are good, some are great, some are terrible and make me want to claw my eyes out. And this is just my overall opinions on each and every one of the Fireteam ops. I do want to note that I'm also talking about these activities specifically in ultimate content inside the portal. So that means I'm basing my opinion on a lot of different factors, such as bans and modifiers, the limited revive situation, stuff like how the level scaling is and higher end difficulty is just. I'm basing my opinion on ultimate difficulty inside the portal, not the version you remember from many, many years ago. Now, obviously, you can agree or disagree. Please let it be known in the comments. Let me know how you feel about some of these activities. And if you could like, comment, subscribe before we get into the video, I'd really appreciate it. Savathun Spire. This might be one of the best pieces of content we have ever seen in Destiny history, and I really do mean that. And it doesn't get the praise it deserves. It is something that is different every single time you do it. It has different mechanics in each and every room. There are different boss fights at the end. There are different enemies that you can fight. You can have Scorn, you can have Fallen, you can have Hive. It really is like the OG D1 strikes of like early Taken King, where they would have some minor variations and minor differences between each version of the strike. You know, you would run it, and sometimes a room would have Fallen in it, and sometimes it would have Taken. That's literally Savathun Spire to a T. It's just that. And it has such amazing ad density as well. It really is probably my favorite activity in the portal just for mindlessly farming or mindlessly killing ads. Because it is just drop in, get kills, move to another room, get a bunch of kills, and then you get a nice boss fight at the end as well. And like I said, the fact that it changes every time I do it, it really is just such a fun activity. Savathun Spire really does feel like it could be the perfect blueprint for how all strikes could be handled in the future. Add some minor differences between each rooms, whether it's the mechanics you do or the enemies that spawn there, and then just keep the actual layout the same every single time. Savathun Spire is genuinely one of my favorite activities in the entire game, let alone within the portal, and I think this activity has actually aged incredibly well and has gotten better over time. I also think Savathun Spire is just like the perfect way to get away from the whole let's make three different versions of everything every single time we make it, and just instead of doing that, make one version of it, but make it really good. You know, instead of making three different battlegrounds every single update, make one really good battleground that just changes every time you do it. And that's what I think Savathun Spire is. Just an incredibly good battleground that changes every time I do it. And I love this place. The Dark Priestess. One of the things that I'll be very clear about is that the Empire hunts are incredibly easy, and since we have all three of them in the portal, they're all kind of just the same bland nothingness, I'd say. And I don't mean that in a negative way, it's just because they came from a different time. They're so easy. The Dark Priestess is probably the best of the three because it doesn't have any annoying mechanics. It really is just kill everything in a room, move it to the next room, kill everything in that room, move it to the next room. It's just the same thing over and over again with no crazy mechanics. The final boss is even the same thing. Just kill a bunch of servitors to break the shield on the actual boss and then deal damage to the boss. It's nothing crazy. The Dark Priestess is probably like the most B tier thing you could ever have in the game. It's like 10 minutes max. It's the best of the Empire hunts, I think. It's better than the other two, but it still isn't amazing in terms of content. It's simple, straight to the point, nothing crazy, no BS mechanics, and every room does feel pretty fast paced and engaging, but it's still just like 10 minutes of killing things and that's it. I mean, it's the most simple thing you're gonna get. It really is. Reclaim, Conductor's Keep, Cabal's Watch, and Fallen Bunker. Yes, I'm doing all three of them at once, because they're all the same thing. The game really would have been better off if these never released, because they really are just a waste of time. They are all the same thing. Seriously, they are. I don't know why we have this dumb mechanic where we're now rotating them in and out of the game when you could just make a single playlist and just call it Reclaim and have all three of them in the single playlist within the portal instead of having one come in one week and then leave and next. It's so dumb. It's a waste of time. They're all the same thing. Some of the locations even overlap within the reclaims themselves. The bosses are unfun and terrible, and genuinely, I cannot tell the difference between any of them. Like, if you were to ask me what boss came from Conductor's Keep or Fallen Bunker, I'd probably tell you Conductor's Keep has the Vex boss and Fallen Bunker has a Fallen boss. But no, Fallen Bunker also has a Vex boss, and so does Conductor. It's terrible. I hate all three of these. They're unfun. They're just worse overthrow, and it feels like a waste of time using the Plague Lands. It kind of just feels like they spat in our face with this one. It was a waste of time, a waste of dev time. It really could have never came out, and the game would have been better for it. These hurt the game more than helped it, in my opinion, and I really do feel that way about all three of the reclaims. I personally think for the future, they should just take all three of these, put them in a single playlist, and put that within the portal, and just make it to where instead of it being, oh, you might get one boss in the Cabal's Watch and one in the Fallen Bunker, just make all bosses within all the reclaims, and just call it reclaim, whatever, instead of having three separate versions, which is just the part of it that just bugs me the most. It's not like Expedition, where at least those are like different locations. Like I know I'm on Nessus, I know I'm on Europa, I know I'm on the Cosmic. Like these are all in the same space, and some of them overlap. All in all, I hate Reclaim. Remove them from the game or make them better. Battleground Conduit. The Echo Battlegrounds are really just a mixed bag of good and bad, and Battleground Conduit is really just the epitome of that because it starts out so strong. The first bit with the Cabal and Vex section where you're fighting them at the same time, all the Overload champions and the Barrier champ, it's tons of fun. That first section is so much fun. I really love that part. Cultivating in this nice part where a giant Hydra's fighting you, and it's just a very cool part. But it eventually goes downhill very, very quickly, like a lot of strikes in this game, and that's that midsection is genuinely terrible. That whole standing on the plate, defending the conflux for as long as you need to, it slows down the pacing of the strikes so fast, and it really is kind of lame for how cool the space feels, because it kind of feels like you're exploring the sewers of Nessus in a way. Now, the boss part is also nothing too crazy, just being this stand on plate to remove the boss shield mechanic, and while it might not be anything crazy, I feel like it's kind of drawn out and it takes away from the strike just because of how boring it already was in the middle part. So you think they give you a bit more of an exciting mechanic to do for this boss, and oftentimes it becomes more of a tedious thing to deal with because the boss is shooting at the same time. They're barrier champions on the actual plate itself. Not only that, it's also over a pit, so I swear, you can absolutely see people falling to their deaths just trying to get to the plate. But it's just such a lame boss experience because it either turns into killing the boss on the first try and it becomes the easiest experience of your life, or you don't kill him on the first try and it becomes an absolute nightmare because there's minotaurs everywhere and now there's hydras shooting at you now. It's just all in all a mixed experience, and Battleground Conduit also has a bug where sometimes that first section where you kill all the Vex and the Cabal, there will be a chance of a goblin getting stuck behind the actual barrier in front of you, so it bugs out there as well. So all in all, this place is just terribly mid to me. It's not a great experience, I think. It might just be a little bit below mid. I don't know. Battleground Conduit, the Echo Battlegrounds, kind of a mixed bag, and this is just really how I feel about Echo Battlegrounds in general. Just like if I could just point to one thing and go, that's kind of mid, it'd be this. Warden of Nothing. Warden of Nothing is really just an alright strike. I think the best part about this place is obviously the theming of it. The actual ad encounters are nothing too crazy nowadays. I feel like the best place is probably going to be the actual old Prison of Elders room with all the champions that are in there. That room right there is basically this entire strike. That's genuinely how I feel. There are other parts where you have like the giant Minotaur room or the area between that and the actual Prison of Elders room. It's all around just more about the theming in terms of this place, and depending on how you feel about Prison of Elders, that's kind of how you're going to feel about the strike in general. Me, I like Prison of Elders, and I love Varix. I think this is all in all kind of just a solid package in terms of strikes, especially considering when it came out. And it's also nothing too bad in terms of ad density nowadays. A couple years ago, this was probably the hardest thing in the entire game, not going to lie. It's a lot easier now to power creep the game. Doing this on GM Alert, though, is actually somewhat difficult. That final boss fight, which is normally like 30 seconds on any other difficulty, is actually somewhat challenging. And the Scorch mechanic, while I think is kind of lame, actually becomes a genuine difficulty on that highest difficulty. And I think that's somewhat kind of unique because it's a mechanic that you almost never see, really. How many times are you getting scorched by that final boss in the Warden of Nothing strike? Never. And it's kind of nice to see a mechanic that I never saw prior, not because it was not there, but because the strike was so easy and that final boss was just so easy at that time. Now, on a higher difficulty, GM Alert, there's actually some difficulty there, so I see the mechanic now, which is kind of cool. Not to mention the whole train cart section, which is just always kind of awesome. It's so funny watching the levels of player in this game, because a good player will get through this area, the train cart section, incredibly easily, but a bad player who is new to the game, they'll absolutely get ran over, and it's funny to watch every single time. All around, I think Warden of Nothing is a pretty decent strike. It's nothing too crazy nowadays. I feel like we have better options, but Warden of Nothing is still something I enjoy seeing more often than not. The Devil's Lair. This might be the most important strike in Destiny history, and also might be the most nostalgic as well. If I could take any point in Destiny history and just hang it up and put it in a museum, this would be the piece of history I would put in that museum. It really is just that piece of content that everything has just been kind of derived from. Every raid, every single dungeon, every single strike in this entire game came from the Devil's Lair in one way or another. Even taking nostalgia away from the strike, it still is an incredibly good piece of content. The refinery part where you're defending ghosts is just such good high intensity mobbing that even in today's sandbox it can still be somewhat of a struggle sometimes. And the walker room is just super cool. The way that the walker kind of presents itself as this overwhelming presence within the room that you can always get sniped from at any point is just something that not many strikes in the game have. That presence, and that's what I love about the Walker Tank room. It feels like you also have the ability to kind of handle this room in whatever way you want to, whether you want to deal with the bricks first, or the champions, or you go left, or you go right, or deal with the snipers. Any way you decide to take this room on, you can do it your way, and that's what I love about that Walker Tank room. It also kind of feels like a boss before a boss, which is incredibly cool too. Then you get to Sevix Prime, which by far has the best OST in the entire game. I really do think the Sevix Prime OST might be better than Deepstone Crypt Lullaby, and that might be a hot take, but that's just my honest opinion. Really, from start to finish, this entire strike is just peak. I have always loved this place, whether it's for nostalgic reasons or even while it's in the portal. It really is just an all-around great strike. The Arms Dealer. This is really as mid as it can get, and I really do mean that. The biggest issue I have with this entire strike and the rework they did to it is that they removed a voice line. That's really the biggest thing that I care about regarding this strike. They removed my favorite Cade 6 quote. That's it. Now, the Walker Tank room is probably the most iconic part, and now that one of the Walker Tanks has been replaced by a Tormentor, I think that's pretty cool and kind of a unique use of that enemy type. And the whole mechanic of the strike is just dunking more solar charges, and adding more times that you have to dunk doesn't really slow it down too much. It really is maybe 30 more seconds on the actual strike length. And the boss fight is nothing too crazy. I feel like Brock Hazan has been done a million times. We've had 5 different versions of this strike, and we've kind of landed on a version now which just has AI that helps us kill the boss, which is very, very nice. It's again just dunking solar charges, and it's just it's all around kind of just a all right strike. I say it's B tier because it just can't get any more difficult or any easier than this. It really is just solid. Battleground Oracle. Really, all the Battleground Season of the Chosen pieces of content within the portal kind of just feel like slop to me because they are all just the same thing over and over and over again. You have a pretty high intensity starting part where within Oracle you are defending Ghost from an onslaught of Cabal. This part is the best part of the entire strike for me, and it goes downhill from here rapidly, as the middle section of this strike is probably the worst of the Season of the Chosen strikes, and it's because you're basically dealing with these wyverns that are shooting at you all the time, wyverns that are immune. You basically have 3 different strikes where the middle section is just kill things for an extended period of time, and that's what makes it to where you have enemies that are in your way that you need to kill stuff in order to kill them. And it becomes this unfun situation where you have wyverns shooting at you all the time, and it's just not a fun room. And then you get to the boss fight, which is just a Kargan reskin. That's really what the boss is. He's the same thing as Kargan from the Insight Terminus, just in a different room. Really, all the Season of the Chosen battlegrounds to me are pretty boring and pretty mid, I'm gonna be honest. And it's kind of crazy to me how we got 3 of the 4 of the Season of the Chosen battlegrounds before we got Lightblade in the portal. It's just side tangent. We got 3 of the 4 before we got Lightblade. Insane. The Insight Terminus. Out of all the original D2 strikes that are currently in the portal, this might be the best one, because all the other strikes have had some crazy rework or crazy change that have made them either unbearable or just a lot less fun, and this one has basically maintained 99% of its identity from that previous time. No changes to the voice lines, no changes to the routing, no changes to much of anything within the strike. It maintains a lot of its original identity. For one, Failsafe is awesome. One of my favorite characters in the game, and I'm glad that they haven't changed anything involving her within this strike. Not only that, the boss fight is also pretty fun as well. I think Kargan is just all in all a pretty good, fun fight because it feels engaging. It feels like if you're trying to solo it, you have a lot more to do because you have to do 3 plates. And if you're doing it with a team, you kind of feel like you have that coordination within one another that you each know to go take your own plate and defend it. It feels like there's some team play there. This strike is very quick and to the point in a very good way, and it's not like a lot of other strikes where it feels like it's bloated. It really is just quick, easy, and I like that about this strike. The fact that it also maintains a lot of its old identity is incredibly good too. This has not changed much, it never needed to change, and I think this right here is a good poster child for what happens when you just leave things be and let them exist as they are and the way they are instead of trying to change them and make them better in some kind of annoying way. The Proving Grounds. The Proving Grounds is really just an alright strike. It's one of those strikes that I feel like has gotten easier as time has gone on. It used to be probably one of the hardest things in the game to do. That boss fight with all the fireballs and the meteors that the boss would send at you. Like, that was actually challenging at a certain time. But now it feels like you kind of just walk through this place with no real resistance anymore. I think one of the coolest things about this strike, though, has got to be the lore involving it. I don't know, something about the talk between Keitel and Zavala as you go through this strike kind of just feels very, I don't know, nostalgic of an older time. Proving Grounds is from Season of the Chosen, which was, by this point, 6 years ago. And that's old. That's something to be nostalgic about. And I feel like that conversation, that lore piece about us kind of fighting Keitel's champion, and this was like that moment where our side and their side kind of came together for the first time. It was such a nice piece of content, and I just love this strike. For starters, the Walker Tank room is still incredibly good. It can get hectic, and it can get out of control really fast. It's one of those moments where also you have an enemy type that kind of creates presence within the room, which is just such good game design. I think the best areas within the portal are those areas that give you tension, give you stress, and that Walker Tank room is one of those because it really does feel like at any moment you can just get sniped by a Walker Tank if you're not good enough. The boss fight is also tons of fun too. It's definitely gotten easier as time has gone on, as it used to be one of the hardest things in the entire game. Really, this final boss fight of the Proving Grounds ended many Nightfall runs because that boss with those meteors that he shot at you did so much damage. But it feels like nowadays we're much more skilled as players, so this room is just way easier, power creep has taken over, and all in all, that painful experience we had in the past is a lot more fun nowadays in the portal, I think. All in all, I think the Proving Grounds is just an incredibly good strike that encapsulates a different time period of Destiny. This is when things used to be difficult. When we first had this was difficult. But now we're in a different era, and I think that in the portal on ultimate difficulty, this still has some challenge within it, but it isn't as bad as it used to be. And I say that in a positive way. The Glassway. I'm gonna be honest, out of all the strikes in the game that I used to hate, this one has grown on me. Really, I used to hate this strike so much back in the day. When it first came out, it just had too many champions, too many enemies. It felt like it went on forever. The shank room where you were being sniped while you're on the plate was never fun. But nowadays, as we've basically power crept everything, this game has made this strike way too easy now, I think. And the amount of champions in the boss room is actually not enough. Yes, I think they need more champions in the boss room. That's crazy. I actually love this strike now. It really is one of the best pieces of content in terms of Vex combat. But this isn't just a Vex strike, it also has Fallen in it as well. The Draining the Pit moment is incredibly underrated, I think, in terms of strike moments that should be more idolized, I think. It really is such a fun and iconic moment standing on that plate being bombarded by shanks, and then you see the actual flow of the Radio Lair drain in the trenches. It's such a cool part of the entire strike, I think. The Glassway really is a strike that I used to hate, but now I can't sing its praises more. The first 3 rooms where you're fighting through the Fallen kind of feels like an escalation every single time. One room's kind of easy, and then the next one gets harder, and then the final room's a bit harder than that. It is just such a fun sequence of events. This entire strike just has grown on me so much over the years. And like I said, I used to hate this place so much. I feel like there just were too many champions in the boss fight, and that the boss fight was terrible. But now, that boss fight is so much fun. We need more champions in there, and I think things should be harder in this strike than they are now, because we have just power crept the game so much. Hypernet Current. Hypernet Current is one of those strikes that I used to like, but it has genuinely gotten worse over time. It really has a pretty good start where you're kind of scaling the mountain cliff face and you fight the giant tormentor. That's probably the best part of the entire strike. That entire sequence with the Cabal kind of bombarding you as you fight this tormentor, that's the most fun part of this entire strike. But after that, it falls off incredibly quickly. It's just really every annoying taken trope. Kind of like with Inverted Spire, they just took everything that was annoying about a certain enemy race and put it in a strike. You have blights and environmental damage, which is always annoying. In the Sparrow section, which was novel at that time, most people will just end up skipping nowadays. Really, if skipping something has become the norm, that to me is a sign of bad game design. Not only that, anytime I end up doing this section, it always feels like somebody dies here. If you don't have a skimmer, it's kind of just like good luck. Especially with the environmental damage, how it kind of just one-shots you when you're on a Sparrow now, which is incredibly annoying. The final boss is nothing special. It really is just a giant Hydra that uses taken abilities. It shoots blights at you, it shoots Axion darts at you, and it moves across the room as you deal chunks of its health. And it takes the exact mechanics of the previous encounters, which is to use the craniums to shoot the blights in the walls, as well as the blights on the floors, just to progress the fight. And really, I just don't like this strike at all anymore. Really, whenever I see it for matchmaking, I kind of just roll my eyes because I just don't want to do it. The best part is the Tormentor fight, and then it's downhill from there, like I said. And not to mention, Nimbus. I don't know if you're on the hate train with that guy, but Nimbus is also in this strike. So if you hate that guy, you probably hate this strike as well. Hypernet Current, really bottom of the list for me. It's like D tier. I really just don't enjoy this place at all. I find it not a good experience, especially in the portal with ultimate content, and how the blights can just genuinely one-shot you sometimes. If there's any sort of like arc surge, it's over. Like, I just don't care. Not worth my time. All in all, terrible activity. Gotten worse, and I think it's worse in the portal. Expedition, Nessus, Cosmodrome, and Europa. Yes, I'm doing all three at the same time, because just like Reclaim, they're the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and rapid fire through these because really they aren't anything crazy. They're all the same thing. It really is just an escort mission on 3 different places in the Destiny universe. You have the Cosmodrome, you have one in Nessus, and you have one on Europa. If I had to pick one that was the best, I would probably say Cosmodrome just because of the scenery, but really all of them are the exact same thing, and the only difference is the enemies you fight and the area you're in. For Expedition Cosmodrome, you're primarily fighting Fallen Hive. For the Nessus version, you're primarily fighting Fallen and Vex, and then for the Europa version, you're primarily fighting Cabal and Vex. Really, the difference maker is just on what version of enemies you like to fight more. Whatever you prefer to fight more is which one you'll like the most. I know that when these first came out back in Season of the Plunder, they were not a fan favorite. You know, nobody liked Expeditions, but I'm going to just go ahead and put my hand up and say, I don't hate these in the portal. I actually think within the portal, Expeditions are actually had a glow up. I think they're way more fun nowadays than they were way back in the day because there's actually some challenge now. I remember these being like 5-10 minutes max because they were just so brain dead easy because there was just like no level scaling at that time. Plus, during Season of the Plunder, we had Arc Titan, which was just dominating everything. It was almost like an AFK build. You know, you throw one grenade, it kills everything for you. Well, we're not too far off of what that was back then versus what we have now, you know, on Warlock. But besides that point, these actually have some more challenge to them. The level scaling, the way that the levels are done nowadays, feels much better for these pieces of content. And Expeditions, while they might not have been loved back then, I think they're much better now within the portal. If anything, out of any piece of content that has been added within the portal that got a very good glow up, I think it's these. Expeditions are so much better than they used to be, and I'm glad. I'm happy about that. I do want to say I find it incredibly crazy how we got all 3 expeditions within the portal before we saw the Corrupted, the Scarlet Keep, or Lightblade put within the portal. 3 strikes that are way better than all 3 of these combined, and they didn't put them in the portal. We got Cosmodrome, Nessus, and Europa before the Lightblade, and Corrupted, and the Scarlet Keep. That is insane to me, and if you are also malding at that fact, just let me know. Heist Battleground Moon. There's a reason why you see all your favorite content creators using this strike specifically for any other build videos. And it's because it has like one of the best opening sequences in terms of Fireteam ops. A lot of them you have to go through some bullcrap to get to the ads, but this is just straight up thriller right at the start. It's incredibly fun. One of the best opening sequences in the entire Fireteam ops playlist. Just tons of champions, tons and tons of hive enemies, ogres, thralls, acolytes, wizards, all the hive enemies just all in that area. It has a nice little minigame where like you can get shot by the laser tower, but let's be real here, nobody cares about that. It will never get you if you're a good enough player. But all the hive and the ad density of this first room alone just makes this entire strike a fun experience. But then you actually get to the middle room where you're defending Ghost. And defending Ghost is a pretty, expected thing to see within the portal nowadays, really in Destiny in general. And this is one of the better locations for that type of mechanic because it very much feels like things are coming at you at a constant rate rather than it being from very spread apart locations. You're kind of in this tight-knit room where it really feels like you have the ability to use a good build and prove that it is a good build in this one room alone because of how much ad density there is. The worst part about this entire strike to me is probably the Season of the Seraph specific thing, which is opening the vault. This is just something that, it's kind of boring and it does take away from the experience, I think, because it'd be nice if the vault door was just open already and you could just walk right into the boss room. And having to do it every single time is not that fun. But it's such a short encounter, it doesn't really take away that much from the experience, I think. As for the boss itself, it is a pretty decent fight. It's nothing too crazy with a very simple mechanic. The boss itself is just teleporting around the room. You gotta deal damage to him until you get to half his HP. And then after that, you just gotta dunk the orbs from specific enemies in the room. It really is nothing too crazy. Kill the things, pick up the orbs, dunk it in the center of the room. It's just Gambit. It's literally just, it's mini Gambit, but in a strike. That's really what this is. All in all, I think Heist Battleground Moon is one of the better experiences within Portal Ops. It doesn't have too much crazy annoyance that makes me roll my eyes at it. There's no crazy dumb mechanics that make this unbearable. It's just straight thriller, no filler, room after room of great ad clear, and a final boss fight that's pretty decent as well. The slowest part is just opening the door. If that's the worst part, is opening a door, which is something we've done 1,000 times, that's a pretty good thing, I think. Battleground Core. I really, really want to like this place. This has some of the most fun ad clear inside the Portal Ops, and I really do mean that. The Taken part at the very start, where you have to kill the Essence Bearers and throw the orbs into the big blights, that part is incredibly fun. Tons of ad clear. Any build in this area that can get through this part alone is a good build, I think. Then you get to the Vex section, which is just really amazing ad clear as well. Tons of Vex in a very tight-knit room, all coming at you constantly. These two sections, the taking part in the Vex section, are really some of the most fun parts of the Portal. But then it's followed up, and I mean this quite literally, it's followed up by what I think is the worst boss fight in the entire Portal. It is terrible. This boss fight is by far the only reason why I hate this place, but is a big enough reason to make me straight up tell you to never play this activity. It's just terrible. The amount of times it will get into this boss room with 10 plus lives, then lose them all within 2 minutes is genuinely astounding. For one, modifiers will make this unbearable. For a fact, I did not know that apparently the promoted modifier and rage modifier can be on the same enemy at the same time. Try dealing with that on a Minotaur in this room. It's not possible. It's not a fun experience. It is not at all a good time. Oh my god. And I didn't even talk about the boss yet. For one, he's got vision on you all the time because these walls will move around. And if you can't sit behind cover long enough, that means he's going to see you eventually. Any sort of Void Burn, he'll one-shot you. He also has an ability that doesn't even need Void Burn, which is this hollow purple void attack that he throws at you that will one-shot you around walls sometimes. It is a terrible experience. And the teammates who don't know the mechanic of this fight as well bother me because the amount of times they'll see me clearly in a plate dealing damage to a boss and they're doing whatever on Timbuktu is not a fun experience. I hate this place. The boss also has way too much health. It really feels... Maybe the boss has too much health because it feels like I'm just one person and the only person in the room dealing damage to the boss, but genuinely it is like a boss fight that takes 15 minutes long sometimes. It is terrible. It's such a bad experience. I hate this. I hate this place so much. Oh my god, I hate it. I'm sorry. This is turning into a rant really quickly. This is supposed to be about all fire. No, this was all a psyop to talk about how bad this activity is. The Technocrat. This activity really isn't that crazy. Like I had mentioned with the previous Empire Hunt, they're all pretty simple and pretty easy, and I just find this one to be the most annoying of the three because it just has, the best room is the starting room with the Briggs. And after that, it's just small room after small room after small room after small room. It's just the same thing over and over again with trip mines thrown in there. It's kind of annoying too when you have those trip mines and all those taken mines that slow you down. Or sorry, not taken, fallen mines that slow you down. It's just incredibly annoying. As I mentioned with previous strikes in here, I think it was Inverted Spire as well as Hypernet Current. This kind of feels like they have all the annoying fallen tropes. Maybe not as bad as I'm putting it out because this is really just a 10-minute strike because of how simple and fast it is. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I feel like it could be way better. The boss fight is also kind of just I don't feel much for it. I think it has maybe one too many phases because it's got 4 chunks of health and having to destroy the little generators around the room is not too difficult, but kind of be a little bit annoying sometimes. Out of all the Empire Hunts, this is the one that I look down on the most. It's nothing too insane. It's just one cool room, then a series of a bunch of small rooms, really annoying mines in the way as you go through those rooms, and a boss fight that's kind of just meh. I don't feel much for this place. Liminality. This is one of those strikes that's actually kind of challenging. It really is just it's a challenging hell, I'm not gonna lie. It's probably one of the hardest strikes to do in terms of portal ops because it just has so much thrown at you all at once. A Tormentor boss fight, by the way, is never fun. And while the mechanics are not that hard, they are incredibly punishing to do. Dying to lava walls is not fun. In the eye rooms, they will snipe you if you aren't good enough at killing them first. So it's kind of a hit or miss place depending on your own skill. And the lava is rising thing is also pretty funny if you've played Borderlands 2. The city is incredibly sick. I really think that entire room is just tons of fun. It really is a good strike. I think it just depends on the people who play it. All in all, Liminality is just a very, very fun strike. It gives 3 rewards as well, which is up there with, Reclaim and another strike I'll talk about later, which I hate. But Liminality, for longer form Portal Ops, is really, really good, I think. It has a lot of ad clear, it has a lot of different enemy types as well. It explores the Pale Heart, which is just one of my favorite locations in the entire game. Liminality, I never see it in matchmaking anymore. That sucks. I really wish I did, but I understand why. And the reason why is because I'm going to be honest with you, to the average player who does not play this game consistently, this strike is like a little too hard for them. Battleground Foothold. This is the only area of the game where I actually don't mind dying to Cabal Pods, because that starting section is genuinely so much fun. It really feels like an onslaught of Cabal in more ways than the other Battlegrounds give you, because those have a lot of Cabal, but in more of a greater space. This is a nice tight location where there's just drop pod after drop pod after drop pod. It is so much fun. This battleground is so much better than the other 2 chosen battlegrounds in my opinion, because not only does it have a much better starting section, the middle section is much better as well. You're defending Ghost again, but this time you're defending from a bunch of Hive in a very confined location. It is so much fun. A good build is what will get you through this location. A good build is what will make Battleground Foothold an easier activity. And then we get into the final Cabal fight, which is just a war in Skywatch. And I think it's incredibly cool how they kind of used a play space from a previous location in a much better grand way. Because it really does feel like a war that is going on with Hive and Cabal fighting at the same time. Battleground Foothold, all in all, is the best of the Season of the Chosen Battlegrounds, I think, because it just has such high ad density, such great encounter spaces, and it makes it feel like an actual war, which feels much better than the other Battlegrounds, in my opinion. Defiant Battleground, EDZ. I'll be honest, this is one of those places that I kind of feel hit or miss on, because on one side I love it, but on the other end I kind of don't. I feel like the first section with all the Cabal is a lot of fun, very high octane gameplay, but then that middle section where you're at the meatballs like boss room, it's terrible. There's a lot of overloads, and I know it might be kind of annoying to complain about that. Champions aren't that big of a deal nowadays, but when you put overload snipers like a mile away and make them more difficult to shoot than anything else because they are far away, it becomes a problem. It's not too much of a difficulty, especially if you have like a good build that has a lot of range on it. But if you come in here with like the Praxic Blade, you're gonna get sniped really fast unless you just climb up there yourself and kill the overloads, or if you just deflect the bullets the entire time. I don't know. This is one of those places that I kind of feel, iffy on. I kind of wish we got Defiant Battleground Cosmodrome before this one, because EZ out of the 3 was probably like my least favorite, just because it didn't have much going on there. I think the Meatball Room is the best part of the entire strike here. The Boss Room is kind of meh to me. Any sort of mechanic that restricts your movement and tells you not to go in this location just isn't fun to me. It kind of reminds me, well actually, I think it is the exact mechanic from like Blind Well, where if you step out of the area, you just start taking damage over time. It's a novel concept. Not really a fan of it here in a strike because it's just not fun not being able to move where I want to go. Boss fight, nothing crazy. I'm just not a fan of that damage over time effect in the Defiant Battlegrounds, and this is just probably my least favorite of the 3. But it doesn't mean it's bad content. Defiant Battlegrounds is all in all just an okay experience that I wish would have been Cosmodrome instead, because that was my preferred Defiant Battleground from that era. The Sunless Cell. Out of any strike within the portal, the Sunless Cell is what I think is the best strike. Not just within the portal, but the best strike of all time. The Taken King was a golden era of Destiny, and really anything that came from that expansion is just such a high bar above everything else. This strike, from start to finish, is incredibly good. Just amazing ad density. Every single room feels like it's actually a challenge, and every single room feels like it's very fleshed out, and it feels like it flows organically. It's not annoying like some strikes where you have this really weird, awkward downtime where you're traveling from room to room. Every room in the strike feels like it has a purpose. One of the very first rooms you enter where you're having to kill these wizards who open up the big door at the end of the room, this is much more of a close quarters combat situation where you're very much fighting in the fray, in the face of the enemies. Then you get to the Blight room, which is a lot more about range. You have a lot more of a open space to engage with, and you have a lot more room to breathe. But then you go right back into that close quarters combat with the Ogre room, which is a nice brawling arena where you're very much, again, in the face of the enemies. And then you go right back to that range again, where you go to the Shrieker room, which is what I believe to be one of the most iconic rooms in really all of Destiny, because even as a veteran player, you're going to get to this room and have fear strike into you, because the second you see 5 Shriekers open their eyes and stare directly at you, you know you need to get behind some cover. This is just one of those strike moments that feels very iconic. One of those moments that I just wish I could just hang up kind of like the Devil's Lair and put in a room to show other players. It's just one of those things that if you haven't experienced before, you're missing out. Even if it is just one room in a strike. The Shrieker room is iconic to me, and I might be glazing it a bit, but I think it's just that cool. Now, if you're sick and tired of the glaze for the Sunless Cell, well, get ready. I'm going to glaze a walkway. The Font's walkway, where you're kind of descending into the actual Darkblade encounter space, is such a cool location. If you really look out and kind of just look to left or right, and you're just walking down the bridge the entire time, you kind of like look out at the world you're in, it creates a sense of scale. It makes you feel small in a big world, and that is something that was mainly for raids and dungeons. They did this back in 2015. In a strike, they made you feel small in a big world in a strike in 2015. That is something that even content today can't do. Even some of the raids and dungeons that we get nowadays can't capture that grand scale that the Sunless Cell did back in 2015. That's just insane to me. Really, from start to finish, this entire strike is incredibly good. The Darkblade encounter might be one of the best boss fights in all of Destiny in terms of strike content, because it's a boss fight that really challenges you as a player. It's not like a strike boss where you can sit behind a corner or, take pot shots at the boss because you have a lot of cover. No, this room has no cover. It has 3 walls in the middle and that's it. You have to fight the boss. You have to be in the fray and you have to have situational awareness. This is one of the few pieces of content in the game that actually make you as a player have to think about where you're at. A lot of the times you can just put a rift down or use your abilities and just kill everything in front of you. This is an encounter space that actually challenges you because you have enemies coming from every location. And even though we've kind of power crept the game in many ways, this is one of the few strike locations that can somewhat be challenging if you don't know what you're doing. You can definitely see yourself getting killed really quickly. And in a GM situation or a Vanguard alert, that can be a big deal because it can go from a very easy 15-minute run where you get to that boss fight to then wiping in 10 seconds because you weren't paying attention. It really can go that way, especially in a boss room like this. All in all, Sunless Cell might be my favorite strike in the entire game, and really my favorite strike in D2 or D1 or Destiny history, if I'm honest. And the only knock I can probably put on this version of the Sunless Cell is that there are voice lines that are still missing. The amount of times I'll go into the first room and hear, "Ignore her," and I'm thinking to myself, ignore who? Nobody spoke. It's the only thing I could say about this strike that sucks because everything else is just that good. The VO, by the way, for Oryx, top tier. I want that guy to read me children's stories at night. It would be amazing. But besides that, Sunless Cell, 10 out of 10. I love this piece of content, and I want more pieces of content like it. Please, Bungie, give us the Shield Brothers strike. Please, just, it's right there. The Shield Brothers, it's right there. Free content. You would make your community so happy. The Inverted Spire. I hate this place. Out of any of the activities within the portal, specifically Fireteam Ops, this is what I believe to be the literal worst one, and I quite literally, it is just bad. It is terrible. Start to finish, I hate this entire strike. They basically took what was one of the early D2 pieces of content that was way too easy, and then they decided to stretch it out and add as many annoying tropes as they possibly could. Really. Every single annoying Vex trope you can think of is here. Do you like getting detained? Yep, there's detainment fields here. Do you like being blown up by supplicants? Yep, that's here as well. Do you really like standing on plates for extended periods of time? That's here as well. Do you like harpies that snipe you from a distance? That's tons of fun. That's here as well. We have cyclopses that also snipe you from a distance. That's tons of fun as well. Those Vex protection bubbles that they added in episode Echoes? Yeah, that's here as well for some reason. Vex that die and then leave damage over time on the ground. Yeah, that's just baked into the strike. No modifiers needed, just baked into the strike. Hell, for some reason, the Season of the Seraph lasers from Heist Battleground Moon. For some reason, those are in this strike. I don't know what they were doing. They really took every annoying thing they could think of and just crammed it into the strike. They took what was once like a 10-minute strike max and made it like 25 minutes max. It really is the worst strike in the entire game. The Inverted Spire to me is really the definition of straight filler, no thriller. There's just no fun, exciting parts of the strike, and it all just feels like bloat. It feels like I'm doing more annoying things that I don't want to do than actually killing enemies. I'm standing on plates, I'm breaking detainment bubbles, and I'm all in all hating my life doing this strike. It makes Reclaim look good. And even though that it gives you 3 rewards, which is the same as like Liminality and Reclaim, it doesn't make it any more enticing to do. I do not enjoy this strike, and I will never do it if I see it in rotation. It's just terribly unfun, and it was a waste of dev time to revamp the strike. I really feel that way. Birthplace of the Vile. This is one of those encounter spaces that has just grown on me as time has gone on. When this first came out in Witch Queen, I'm gonna be honest, I was not a fan. I thought this was just like another nothing burger strike, but as time has gone on, I have found myself loving this place. Every single room just feels like a unique encounter space, and while a lot of the mechanics of the strike, well really the only mechanic is just standing on plates, it doesn't feel intrusive enough. It doesn't feel like it's getting in the way. It feels like it's kind of like a nice progression of events because you're going from doing 1 plate to 2, and then each time you do a plate, you kind of get this nice middle room, which I think is incredibly cool on how they reuse that content within the boss fight. Now, I'm not typically a fan of reusing content, but when you use it in a nice strategic way, it's kind of cool. It's kind of nice how as you do the strike, you learn about the boss fight before you even get there. You know what the boss fight's going to be like because the rooms that you were in previously will be in the boss fight in one way. Now, this strike experience is nothing too crazy, but I think it's good enough with enough ads in it to very much feel like a fun encounter space to be in. All in all, Birthplace of the Vile is an incredibly good piece of content. I think it's one of the few strikes that have actually gotten better within the portal. You know, back in the day, this kind of felt like a very, very big nothing burger. You know, I kind of walked through it. It was never too difficult. It was like 25 minutes max. I never remembered ever struggling with this place, if I'm honest. It was never too difficult, and the hardest part is probably the screeds. That first plate where all the screeds are attacking you, that's the hardest part of this entire strike. Other than that, I think this is just a good place. I think it's better within the portal, and all in all, actually am excited to play this when I see it in matchmaking. Exodus Crash. Look, I'm gonna be honest, I am not a fan of the strike, because it really feels like half of the strike is in one room and one room only. The boss fight, I think it still sucks, and most of this entire strike is just traversing a patrol zone. Not only that, the walker, before the actual boss fight, is just a pathetic attempt at copying the Devil's Lair. The pikes that are in that room as well are terrible and they'll one-shot you sometimes. This is just not a fun strike to me. I think it's just kind of mid. I would say below that. It's been revamped and changed so many times I can't even really determine which version we're on anymore. You know, the new version of it with a Scorch Cannon feels kind of forced and I hate it. And trip mines. You know, trip mines are never fun. I don't know why you have to have trip mines in a strike. It's never fun. Again, it feels like half the strike is in one room, and then the rest of the strike is just in patrol zones. The boss fight, I'm not a fan. Never will be. I think the shanks in that room are incredibly annoying, and I feel like this is one of those strikes that is incredibly frustrating because out of any strike that feels frustrating to die in the boss room, it's this one. You know, there are some other strikes where like you get to the boss room and you wipe and you're like, you know what, I can do another run. I don't mind it. This place, if I die in the boss room, I am getting off for the night. I don't enjoy it. It's such a terrible experience. All in all, I kind of wish you can go back to that random time where this strike just got like blipped out of existence. I don't know if y'all remember that, but there's like a good 6-month period where this strike just didn't exist. And I kind of wish you can go back to that because those times were actually pretty fun, believe it or not. Battleground Behemoth. This place is really like decent to terrible. It has an incredibly fun start with tons of ad clear at the very beginning, tons of champions, tons of Cabal raining in from the skies. The first section is tons and tons of fun. But that middle section, it quite literally puts me to sleep. It's just killing a bunch of Cabal to get another Cabal enemy to spawn in so you can pick up what he drops to then throw out the thing that you have to blow up, and you do that 3 times. And this entire strike is all in a patrol space, just like the other two, and I think that's incredibly lame. The boss fight, while it's nothing crazy, I think does present a bit of a challenge to you. You know, you kind of have a boss fight that will one-shot you sometimes. Like, if you get up close to that Cabal enemy, the boss, I don't know his name, I'm not going to even bother looking it up, but he will two-shot you. He does not care. That final section of this strike is actually tons of fun because it is probably the most intense part of the entire strike. And it is a boss fight that feels like it drags out a lot longer than it should, but in a good way. A lot of boss fights feel like they're very quick, to the point, 2-3 minutes max. This boss fight feels like it drags on, and it kind of feels like the bulk of Behemoth is the boss fight. Now, even though the boss fight might not be that bad, everything else about the strike is just terribly balanced. It goes from moments where it's very high-octane gameplay to slow gameplay that makes me want to fall asleep to a boss fight that will two-shot me. It's just terribly balanced, and I don't know what really went wrong with this place, because it just feels like some moments are incredibly easy, and then others are just too challenging for no reason. And for me, out of all the strikes in the game, this might be one of the more poorly balanced areas. Because, like I said, this feels like you go from easy to hard again to easy. It doesn't feel like there is any flow within this strike. You're just patrol space, travel to another location, patrol space, travel to another location, boss fight. It isn't anything insane to me. I also do want to note, I find it kind of funny how we have 3 of the 4 Season of the Chosen Battlegrounds, and we don't have Hailstorm yet. What's up with that? We got 3 of them, but we didn't get Hailstorm. We got 2 of them on Nessus, but we didn't get the one on Europa. What's up with that? I don't know. Maybe I don't remember Hailstorm that much. Maybe that one's even worse. But I think it would have been cool if you had all 4. Just my thought. Fallen Saber. I love the strike for nostalgic reasons, but I'm going to be honest, I don't enjoy it in the portal. And it's because it feels like we power crept this place way too hard. It used to be one of the harder strikes in the game. You know, when you were doing the war set part, defending the war set, kind of felt like the champions there actually had some power to them. But now it's just like you're killing them before they even come out of the skiffs. This entire strike has been power crept to hell and back. It is way too easy than it needs to be, and I really do think out of any of the old D1 strikes that have come back that needs like a big buff or a rework, Fallen Saber I think needs one. It's way too quick. It's like 10 minutes of a strike, and it really feels like the only part that's good is the war sat part. Everything else, even the boss room, is just kind of like, eh? You know, you get to the boss room and there's like no enemies there. It feels like the actual environmental effects are more deadly than the actual boss itself. It feels like we power crept this place, and for an old D1 strike, I think it needs a little bit of love. I don't know what they could do to it. I don't want them to do what they did with like Inverted Spire, where they just make it like twice as long for no reason. But it needs a little love, needs some spice in there. So maybe some more enemies in the boss room for sure, because it really is just like a couple shanks and like 2 champions. That's the entire boss room. And while the room before the boss room, I don't even know what you would really even call that room there, that has a lot of champions in there as well, but really it's like 2 seconds of like 4 overloads and then you're done. It's just too quick, too easy. I feel like Fallen Saber needs just like 1 to 2 more minutes of gameplay within this place, because otherwise it's just 10 minutes of a strike, quick, short and sweet, but it's not the short and sweet that I enjoy. It's just, it has no substance. It's really what I feel about Fallen Saber. It feels like it has no substance anymore. And that's a far cry from an old D1 strike that I used to love. The Conduit part, where you're like delivering the orb, or then the lightning part, where like we're gonna get shocked and all that. That part is still very iconic though, and I love that part and will always love that part. Other than that though, Fallen Saber, it needs some love. This is my personal opinion though. The Warrior. Just like with the other Empire hunts, I'm gonna keep this very like short and sweet, because this entire strike feels like 5 minutes long, and that's about it. The best part of this entire experience to me is the beginning, where you're fighting the Wyvern, and that's it. After that, I fall asleep for about 5 minutes, and then I'm in the boss room. It's just nothing. Nothing really goes on here. I feel like there's not much to say about this place, because it is just like the other 2 Empire hunts, just a little bit different in the location you go to. It really is just room after room after room of just ad clear, and then you get to the boss fight. And I think the boss location is pretty cool. I think it's kind of nice how you kind of change locations per boss chunk of HP. And outside of that, this is just a very easy place. It's not that remarkable. I actually think the Warrior is easier than Fallen Saber, which is saying something because of how easy that strike is. All in all, Empire hunts in general, I think, are just kind of bleh. And this one, I don't have any emotions towards. Like, I just don't have anything to say about it other than it's okay. It's fine. It's in the portal. It's there. It's actually just probably this is probably the easiest strike in the game. This is the easiest one. If I said it about Fallen Saber earlier, I lied. This is the easiest strike in the game. This is it. Battleground Delve. I actually like this place a lot. Out of all the Echo Battlegrounds we got, this is what I think to be the best of the 3, because it really does feel like a great traditional strike. Every single room has meaning, every single room has purpose, and I just all in all love this strike. Starting off with that first opening sequence, we were kind of like storming a castle in a way. That's what it feels like in that first opening sequence, where you're kind of mounting this obelisk that is now taking place on Nessus, a location that we have seen before but is now changed within the new Echo Battlegrounds. And I think this whole starting sequence is incredibly cool, because it is just tons of high-octane gameplay. tons of champions, tons of enemies to kill, and like I said, it feels like we're storming a castle. We're mounting an assault on a place we've never been to before, and I think that's tons and tons of fun. I also want to give props here for changing the level design. You know, a lot of the problems I have with some of the older, strikes in the game is that they would be in patrol spaces, but they wouldn't really use those patrol spaces properly. At least with Battleground Delve, it might be a patrol space at the start, but it is a different location. It has been changed, it has been altered, it is different than the version we remembered. If you go to this location with a Nessus just on the patrol space, it's completely different. It's not all green, it's not a bunch of fauna and, foliage kind of taking root. It doesn't feel like it's overgrown within the regular version of Nessus, but on this version of it, it feels like a new area. Even if it is a pre-existing location we've been to before, it feels new. And I feel like that's just a nice thing and a nice touch they should do with more strikes in the future. Make old existing locations feel more unique by adding more to them. Moving on, we get to the middle section of this strike, which is just a nice Vex section. It really feels like you're being bombarded by Vex enemies from all sides, and while this room might be kind of hit or miss for some people, I actually love this room. I think it's incredibly cool and a great use of encounter space, and it feels like a tight-knit location that feels like it's got tons of enemies to kill, and I love this room. It really is tons of fun, and it might be one of the best Vex sections in the entire game. One of them. Really, I do feel that way. Moving on, I want to talk about the dual boss fight at the end, which I just think is incredibly cool, because you cannot say that about any other strike in this game. You could say about maybe like Shield Brothers from D1, but there are no other strikes in the game that have multiple bosses, and I think that is incredibly cool. You have a Fallen boss at the start, and then a Vex boss after you defeat him, having two bosses back to back, which is incredibly cool. And as for that final boss, which is the Vex boss, it's so cool to me how you kind of enter the encounter space from one room, and then you have to turn around and fight the boss from where you just came from. Even if it is just, a very quick and easy boss fight, I think this is one of the cooler fights in the game. Dual boss fights are always fun, and I think it's kind of cool how they did this. And I think the only way they could one-up this is to make it to where you fight two bosses at the same time. I'm going to say it again. Bungie, bring back the Shield Brothers. Please, bring it back. Anyways, that's saying something about every single Fireteam op. This video has taken me like 3 to 4 weeks to even finish, and it comes at a very bad time because Destiny is going into some rough moments over the next few months, so I don't really know what I will or will not be doing. Might do Pinnacle Ops, might catch me on some other games if you're interested. I have the ability to stream on some platforms and, maybe make some content on other games. Who knows? Minecraft has been kind of keeping my interest recently. But I appreciate your time if you ended up watching this entire video. I know it's a long one. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Really appreciate your time.